Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
No worries.
Would you mind introducing yourself to everybody?
Yeah, so I'm Jo Rose, and I am CMO at Endeavour Group, which is the parent brand for brands like Dan Murphy's, BWS, Langton's, Jimmy Brings, and then we have a pubs portfolio called ALH Hotels.
Lots of everyone's favourites, I'd say. Can I get started, Jo, if you wouldn't mind me asking? What is your drink of choice?
It has to be a glass of Chardonnay. It does change actually, but at the moment it's a glass of Chardonnay, and we have some pretty good ones. I have to do a bit of a sales pitch here. We've got some pretty good ones in the Endeavour portfolio. So we've got a winery brand called Oak Ridge, which actually has just won Best Winery in Australia in the last few days.
Very good. Congratulations, Oak Ridge.
Topic.
Jo, let's hear a little bit about you, if you don't mind. Can you tell me about one of your career highlights, and can you tell me what it's taken you to get to this point in your career?
Yes, I think probably the main one that comes to mind was an opportunity I was lucky enough to have back in 2018 when I went to run the marketing function for Woolworths New Zealand, and it was the first time really for me running a marketing function. It was a new culture. You know, I'd moved from the UK to Australia already, so I'd done one kind of culture shift, and this was another one again. And I did it in a remote working capacity, so I ended up doing a week in New Zealand and a week in Australia, and that was before COVID normalised the whole kind of being on screen thing, so that was a bit of a challenge. But there's a whole bunch of things that I learned from that and that enabled me to do that, right? And I'm a bit of a fan of Brene Brown. I don't know if you
Yes,
know
absolutely. Yeah.
So she uses this analogy around the man in the arena. Have you heard that analogy?
Mm-hmm.
Which is really all about, so it's an analogy about basically having a go. Getting in the arena is all about having a go, knowing that you're going to fall over at some point, probably multiple times, but you'll get back up, and the fact is you're having a go, and you don't ever succeed without actually getting in the arena and having a go. So I think that's so that analogy is just so connected to so much of what I did in that role in particular. And probably the first thing that enabled me to do that role was the sponsorship and support I had from a bunch of leaders at Woolies, a couple of people in particular who really believed in me, supported me, let me go in the arena and have a go, and trusted me to do that. And I guess I kind of carry that with me in my leadership today. I think about, how do I play that role for other people? How do I think about how I support people and put other people in the arena and give them a chance? I think one of the other things it took was a bit of bravery and a bit of guts.
Brene Brown.
Exactly, another one.
Yeah.
Dare greatly. Yeah. And I always think, so often throughout my career, that was a great example, which is why I've picked it. You kind of get this feeling in your stomach, this kind of slight churning feeling in your stomach, and I actually think those are the moments where you go, I have to go for this, because it's the moment of fear that pushes you into doing something different. Yeah. Exactly, and that's where you grow. That's where I find I thrive most, is when there's a little bit of fear and I'm in kind of uncharted territory. It's where you really come into your own.
You've got to lean in, absolutely.
Exactly. And then a few other things I'd say. So, I was in a difficult position in that role because I was working remotely, and I was also an Aussie. I'm not an Aussie, but I was also an Aussie in the Kiwis' eyes coming into a Kiwi business, right? So there were a couple of things that weren't necessarily working in my favour. So part of what I did was really work with them to kind of reframe that as an opportunity for them. So empowering them on the ground to have more decision-making power, to be in more of the meetings that I couldn't be, whilst I was then playing a connection role into Australia. And actually, I was able then to champion the work from New Zealand in the Australian market. And Australia actually ended up using some of the work that we'd created in the New Zealand market for Woolworths Australia. So that then in turn empowered the team. And I'd say the last lesson which I carry with me into this role today is just, I can't stress this enough, having the right support network. You can never do these things by yourself, and sometimes you think you can and you think you have to.
Nope.
But having the right agencies around you, your agency network is really important. Having the right team, having the right marketers around you, but also having the right peer support within the business. I built a really strong relationship with the operations team and the merchandising team, and it's an important trifecta in retail, is marketing, merch and operations. So that support network, never underestimate.
I love that we've just been talking about leadership as well as your career.
Yes.
Great.
Sorry, I feel like I'm preaching.
So good. Okay. I would love to ask you a few questions around the beverage consumer. We haven't talked to anyone in beverages yet. So I want to understand hospitality, beverages. How has the consumer changed post-pandemic?
Yes, it's a really good question, right? And I think, you know, we talk about being in the business of social occasions. You know, we're all about creating a more sociable future. Our brands are part of people's sociable moments. So we tend to think about, you know, how have social occasions changed? And the reality is they have dramatically. And probably the key thing is that people, and you'll feel this, I feel this, everybody wants that authentic human connection. You know, so many of us were starved of it during COVID, particularly the younger generation, who many of their formative years were spent in relative isolation, right? So people now want to get out. There's a real push for live music, for example, in spite of the cost of living crisis, because people just want these in-person experiences more than anything.
How does Endeavour Group, or a specific brand within the family, so I don't mind how you tackle this question, how do you connect with your consumers? You just touched on agencies and the importance of that. You know, how do you come together with your agencies? How are you doing that with your marketing team? How are we connecting with our consumers?
Yeah, so look, I'll pick two of the brands in the stable, and maybe think about the funnel. I'm a big fan of the funnel. I know I agree with all of the philosophy out there that, you know, customers don't go through the funnel in a really logical way, but I still think it's a really helpful way to think about your marketing. So we, like most marketers, operate across the funnel. So I'll give you an example from probably the top and the bottom. So if I think about the top, I'll take BWS as an example of that, because in BWS we've just reset our brand positioning, and we've recently relaunched a new brand platform in market back in May. And the genesis of that really was to start to create more of a standout in an increasingly cluttered convenience category, particularly for the emerging younger consumer who's choosing those missions more and more often.
Yeah.
But also our BWS experience, we realised, had started to take on the cues of the grocery retail experience, and didn't reflect the kind of the vibe of the end destination, the social destination, which typically is where people are on their way to when they pop into BWS, right?
True.
So we saw this opportunity to really revitalise the experience to reflect more of that end destination. So we launched Refreshingly BWS. Refreshingly BWS is a refreshing take on the liquor category, and brings to life the brand proposition, which is kind of a refreshingly easy proposition in its convenience, but also a refreshingly welcoming and playful attitude that sits at the heart of the brand's DNA. So that brand platform has been in market since May. It was a partnership between us and our agency M&C Saatchi, and is full of personality. I think, I'm biased, but I think the line is whatever you drink, however you roll, make it refreshingly BWS, which I just think is so lovely. It's
bubbly, isn't it?
It really captures the spirit of this team. Actually, it's truly BWS, and that's been in market since May. And all of the metrics we look at, so we look at a kind of content performance metric, we look at campaign performance from an ROI perspective, and then we look at bigger kind of brand metrics. And on all of those dimensions, everything's lifted. So we've got really strong brand recall on the work. We've seen ROI, our return on investment for that brand communications, sit at its highest level ever, more so than some of our trade driving communications, which I think is quite surprising for the business.
Yep.
And we've seen an increase in our brand preference. Even in the first month, our brand preference lifted. So it's really moving all the metrics in the right direction. And then if I move to the other end of the spectrum, on the other end of the funnel, I'll talk about Dan Murphy. So we have this amazing asset in our My Dan's membership program, where we have over 5 million active members. And our membership program really offers customers a chance to have kind of tailored offers, personalised offers, but also to access the lowest price in the market. So if you come into Dan's with your My Dan's app, or your My Dan's card, hopefully your My Dan's app, then you can access, we will have proactively beaten any promotions in market, so you will be guaranteed the lowest liquor price, which I think is a pretty cool proposition. Cool. Yeah. And then what we do is we use that to communicate with you in a really personalised way. So that's not uncommon for brands, but we've built our own proprietized personalisation tool, which uses knowledge that we have about your kind of prior shopping experiences and prior choices. So if you're a fan of red wine from Barossa, we can suggest some red wines from Barossa that you might like, perhaps in the Krondorf portfolio. So it's a really powerful tool for us, and enables us to really start to look at spend per member and how we lift spend per member, but also we can connect in the data that we have through our financial partners to look at share of wallet in the market. So where we have lower share of wallet customers who might be spending with Dan's, but also spending with competitors, we can target them to get more of their spend to come back in.
Love that. So clear. Okay, so I think you just touched on some of this stuff a moment ago, but tell me anyway, what does the Endeavour Group do differently?
Okay, so I'm gonna lots of things.
And you can be brand specific here. So if there's hospitality or a specific brand.
Yeah. So I might let me touch on Dan's and I'll touch on hospitality because we haven't talked about hospitality yet. So Dan's, I might talk a little bit about content. So Dan's is really a leader in the category, right? I think many people have a love for the Dan's brand, me included, before I joined the business. It's really seen as an expert in the category. And Daniel Francis Murphy, who was our original founder, he was this great Epicurean. He was like a democratizer of the liquor industry in this country in many ways. He did way more than I think I ever realised. And we've tried to modernise that philosophy with the brand today. So we bring together the lowest prices, as I've talked about, with the biggest range and this kind of wonderful expertise and passion that the team have for the category. And about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, we identified an opportunity to a need, I should say, to really kind of lean into the younger audience and look at how we start to appeal that brand to the younger emerging audience, but also in the context of the convenience category, how we started to think differently about digital traffic and more profitable sources of digital traffic. So in that context, we lent into the world of content in a really meaningful way, and we launched Dan's Daily, which has been out there now for about 18 months. And Dan's Daily is really the inside word on drinks. So there's lots of cocktail recipes in there. There's lots of inspiration recommendations for different bars that you might want to choose to go to drink in the city, whether that be Sydney or Melbourne. So it's really a drinks authority, a content authority on the world of drinks. And what that's enabled us to do is play a really valuable role in then our personalised communications. So we can flow that content through our personalised communications. We can use it in our trade planning. We can use it to help customers navigate better that vast range that we have. So it's becoming an increasingly important tool in our business, not just as a marketing tool, but as a pillar in our business. And I think that's quite new and different. And then probably the other thing I'd talk about is the pubs. So our pubs, we have about 350 of them up and down the country.
Wow.
You might know, I always talk about the Kirribilli in Sydney because it's my favourite. It's where I learned all the words to Daryl Braithwaite horses. I always tell the team that.
Do you want to
That's not cool.
No, it's very cool. You're a woman tugging on my heartstrings.
It's also, actually, it's very relevant because it is also that we are also the biggest provider of live music in the country. That was a real surprise to me, and that's quite amazing when you think about creating a more sociable future and our purpose.
Final question. I'd love to hear a little bit more about, I've seen on your website the strategies that you're employing from a sustainability perspective. Talking to all the marketers here, tell us, how are you doing it? What's working for you? What have you learned? Just give us some insights about this journey so far.
Look, sustainability for us is probably a little bit different to other businesses, right? So we talk about these three pillars in our strategy of people, planet, which I think is typically the one that people associate more with sustainability. And then our third pillar is responsibility and community. And we've actually just recently done what we call a materiality assessment. Sounds very grandiose, but basically what that is just to go out and talk to our stakeholders, customers, team, and other stakeholders like government and partners, to really understand what matters to them when it comes to Endeavour and our role in corporate social responsibility. And what's come out of that is the disproportionate importance of responsibility, given the industry we're in, right? We're in gaming, we're in liquor. So there is this expectation that we play a really responsible role in that space. So that really is the epicenter of our focus when it comes to sustainability. So a couple of things we've done in that space. We've launched Player Protect as part of our pubs work in the last 6 months, and that's really reflective of our ongoing commitment to enabling customers to game responsibly. We also do a lot of work with Drinkwise in the kind of responsible service of liquor world. We recently partnered with Drinkwise, Always Respect, Always Drinkwise campaign, which is really around tackling the association between abuse of alcohol and domestic violence. And so we've activated around the AFL finals as a good moment to really pinpoint that and target that at sport. So that's been a recent example of a partnership with Drinkwise. And then I think it would be remiss of me not to talk about the people pillar, because whilst that responsibility pillar is so important, we are at heart a people business, because we've got 27,000 people and we bring people together. Like, it's what we do. We're a people business. And as a people business, we've been really looking at our charitable partners to try and figure out, how do we align more meaningfully with those charity partners? How do we align more to our purpose of creating a more sociable future? And as part of that, we've just announced a partnership with a charity called Gotcha for Life, an amazing charity. I don't have time to talk about the founder's story and how he built Gotcha for Life, but it's an amazing story. You should look it up. And Gotcha for Life is really about building emotional resilience and social connectedness. And the Endeavour partnership has enabled them just to launch very recently something called the Mental Fitness Gym. So it's all about ways to build that emotional resilience through techniques and tools, and it's open to all Aussies. It's free and open to all Aussies. So I think that's just another way where we can use our purpose to do good, to do good in the country.
Great. Thank you so much for your time.
No worries.